Okay, so I have a little bit of an introduction, did a little bit of research on Dr. Lali, and so let's get started with the little bit of research I did to introduce him. So he graduated from the University of Sydney in 1989 with a medical degree, and then he obtained a PhD at the University of Sydney in 1993, and he focused on chronic cerebral ischemia under Professor Michael Morgan. And then he completed fellowships at Mayo Clinic as well.
Yeah.
Um, and Toronto Western Hospital. So those are two fellowships that he did. Then he entered neurosurgical practice in 2000s. And then he holds an MBA from the University of Reno, Nevada, completed in 2020. And this is the craziest fact, I think. He's performed over 10,000 spine surgeries. That might be a little bit outdated, but he can tell you more about that. And he's also a founder of Spine Point, which is a business that he created for spinal implants. And we'll talk more about that as well. And he's the founder and president of Think First of Northern Nevada, which is a nonprofit organization which is focused on preventing head and spinal cord injuries among high school students. And he's also a member of several professional organizations, including American College of Surgeons, Congress of Neurological Surgeons, North American Spine Society, and the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons. And among numerous awards that he's gotten that I found on his LinkedIn page, the one that I really got surprised by is the prestigious Young Neurosurgeon Award by the World Federation of Neurosurgeons in 1997. So this was awarded to Dr. Lali. Would you like to add anything else, Dr. Lali, something that you're
No,
working on?
that sounds more than enough, doesn't it, Serena? Thank you. That
Yeah,
sounds awesome.
couldn't
And
fit everything in, but
yeah, and I think, you know, the thing about it is that you look at all of that, and when I was in high school, I went to a public high school, and I just wanted to be a physician. And what you see is one step, one step, one step, one step.
yeah.
You will all look back on your lives and careers in 20 and 30 years' time, and you will all achieve different things. And all of these things that I've done is just one step, just the next
Hmm.
step, just the next step, the next step. So thank you for the great introduction.
No, you're welcome. All right, so I'll hand over to our secretary, and she'll be going over some of her questions. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yep. Good evening, Dr. Lali. Pleasure
I,
to meet you. So we're going to start with the first section, which is about your education and your training journey to become a neurosurgeon. So
yeah,
the first question we have for you is what drew you specifically to neurosurgery?
okay. So let's go one step back. And, you know, when I went to high school, I went to a public high school, and my dream was just to be a physician. And I think as a physician, you make such a profound effect in people's lives in a positive way. The biggest thing that I ever did was be a physician. My dad was a physician, he was a family doctor. I just wanted to be a doctor. So, um, and I don't know how your system is, but in Australia, we did standardized testing at the end of 12th grade. And then the top 1 or 2% managed to get into medical school. And I was just pleased to get into medical school. Finished medical school. It took a couple of years to get the rhythm, but by the end of it, I kind of knew what I was doing. And then I when I started internship and residency, to me it was, and it sounds stupid thinking back, but it was what's the most challenging. And I wanted to challenge myself. And all of us want to know how good are we, how bad are we. Some of us want to be astronauts. Some of us want to be the prime minister. To me, it was either cardiac surgery or neurosurgery. And I thought that neurosurgery was the hardest. And so it would challenge me the most. And so I got attracted by the fact that it seemed intimidating and nobody really wanted to do it. And I remember that when I was a resident, one of the neurosurgeons said to me, "Are you willing to work 16 hours a day for the rest of your life?" And I said, "Well, I am, as long as I can sleep for the other eight." Um, and so it was a challenge. And it really was a personal thing about trying to push myself as hard as I could.
Yes, that is actually definitely very inspiring to hear. Um, the next question that we have is can do we have the next slide? Oh yes. So could you tell us a little bit more about the obstacles that you faced when you were in the journey of becoming a neurosurgeon?
Sure. So I have two kids, three kids, two of them are in high school, and I have these same discussions with them. The first thing that I'm going to tell you is the biggest obstacle is probably yourself. And it's daring to dream, daring to say, I want to do something that seems out of reach. And if you want something bad enough and you work towards it and you don't accept anything else, then overcoming your own hesitancy and your own doubt is the biggest thing. And what happens is you start orienting yourself and you start opening doors for yourself. So around about in medical school, in my fourth year, we had a 5-year medical school. That's kind of when I said, I think I want to go do neurosurgery. So we had a sub internship, and I went to Yale New Haven Hospital in Connecticut. And Yale is pretty famous. And I spent 3 months there. Then I did another 3 months as a sub internship, which was kind of between medical school and internship at a children's hospital. And I got to know the local neurosurgeons. And all I did was I wrote my first paper as an intern. And all I did was I made it clear that I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. So the obstacles, you need a methodical pathway. Well, a neurosurgeon came back. I was 2 years out of medical school, and I was just doing general rotations. And a neurosurgeon, his name is Michael Morgan, he came back from Mayo Clinic. He was setting up a lab, and he said, "Would you like to join me in the lab?" And I was his first student, and I didn't know what I was doing. And after a year, I was supposed to do a master's. I had nothing, and I said, "I can't go back with nothing." He said, "Well, why don't you do a PhD?" And in 2 years, I completed all the work for a PhD. And then when I came back, I was now wanting to be a neurosurgeon with a PhD, and nobody had a PhD at the time in Australia. And it was pretty straightforward getting into neurosurgery. I kind of knew that the pathway had been made by my boss. So I think the biggest obstacle is you. And if you're not willing to work hard, and it is a commitment, my average day now, I've been a physician now for 39 years, which sounds crazy. I'm up at 5 in the morning. I reach a hospital by 7. I'm the busiest spine surgeon in our group. There's 31 of us, and I still do all these other things. You can't be lazy. We're all lazy. I mean, my son's lazy. He works hard, but he's lazy too. My kids spend all their times on their iPads, on their iPhones, and Instagram and Snapchat and all the rest of it. But you've got to be driven. This has to be a passion. And it doesn't have to be neurosurgery. It could be being a pediatrician. It could be being an oncologist. It could be being a dentist. You just got to have a passion for something. And if you have a passion for something, then you can make it happen. So the obstacles that are in front of you to becoming a neurosurgeon are not the obstacles that you think they are. Yes, you've got to get good grades. Yes, you've got to get into medical school. If you don't do those two things, it's kind of hard to be a neurosurgeon. So you've got to look at the next step, and you've got to make sure you do that step as well as you can. And for a lot of you, I would think the next step is trying to get into medical school after high school. That has to be your focus. How do I get into medical school? Forget everything else. I've had high school students and even medical students with good intent who said, "I want to be a neurosurgeon," and then they haven't gotten to the next step. So you can't look at the horizon without looking at what's in front of you. And you have to look at the next step and do it as well as you can. And the only obstacle is you. And The three keys I tell my son: work hard, be organized. That's it. And the third one is actually work comes first. So get the work done before, you relax and do things. But if you're organized, plan. I'm a big organizer. I'm planning. When exams were coming up, I knew how many weeks it was, how much time I do for every exam. And by the week before the exams, I actually eased off because I knew the work. So you got to plan it. Nothing should be last minute.
I see. That's actually very relatable to all of us as well. And I hope we can apply all of that when we go through the same
Yeah.
journey as you have.
Yeah.
Another question. What motivated you to pursue two fellowships and how do they complement each other?
Okay, that's a good question. So here's what happens is you have this idea that when you finish neurosurgery residency, that you can start operating and you can start doing things. And the truth is, you really can't. You just know the basics, you know the anatomy, you know little bits. You need finishing school. So Mayo Clinic is probably one of the most prestigious places for neurosurgery in the world. I went to Mayo Clinic. It was really hard. You cover your service 24 hours a day. So at 2 in the morning, they could page you every day. And I used to get to work by 4 in the morning, and get home at 8 or 9 o'clock. There was a gym in the hospital, and you go to the gym because you were there. So the fellowships are really finishing school to get more skills. But the second thing that the fellowships do is networking. And I'll give you an idea. There's about 4,500 neurosurgeons in America, and a lot of them I know. And during my fellowship, my mentors I still stay in touch with. Some of the other fellows I stay in touch with. It's networking. And they've invited me to participate on projects. I call them when I have problems. So fellowships are finishing school. Mayo Clinic was general neurosurgery, so a lot of intracranial stuff. And Toronto Western Hospital was spine surgery, so it was really finishing that. And by the time I'd done those, I got the extra training so that when I went into practice, I was reasonably competent. But this is going to scare you. It takes about 10 years of practice before you become good at what you do. So you think the neurosurgeon is good on day one, they're not. It takes about 10 years. So about 10 years of practice before you can say, I'm comfortable doing everything. I'm not getting scared by what I'm doing as well. And so this was additional finishing school before I went into practice.
I see. I hope we can all apply that as well. It was a pleasure talking to you, Dr. Lali. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll have our vice president now to do this section.
Good evening, Dr. Lali.
Hi,
So
Ahmed.
my questions are more linked to your practice.
Yep.
So my first question is, what does a day in your life look like as a neurosurgeon and innovator?
Okay. It's a good question. So most of what I do is spine surgery now. I stopped doing intracranial surgery about 4 years ago. There was just too much. I'm up at 5. I work out at 5 in the morning, and I usually leave for work by about 6:30 in the morning. If it's an operating day, I'll leave by about 6:15. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays I operate, and it's usually full days. And usually we go till about 4, 5 o'clock, sometimes 7 o'clock in the evenings. Then half day on Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday I'm in the clinic. We see patients. I have physician assistants. They're people that help me. They're not physicians, but they see patients in the clinic with me. So we see about 40 patients, but each one of them gets about half an hour. So it doesn't feel like it's rushed. And usually I'm home by 6 p.m. That kind of takes all the time. We take call, where call is covering the emergency room, and that's 1 in 3. So every third night, I'm covering our group. So this weekend, I'm covering our group. It doesn't really leave much time for anything else. My trick is when I go through my email inbox, if it doesn't need to be answered straight away, I leave it, and then I come back to it on Saturday morning. So Saturday morning between 9, after I've worked out, between 9 and 12 is when I sit down and start working on everything else. Get all the routine stuff done. Then what you do is you sit down and you say, okay, you need to think not just about today, next week, I start thinking about next month, next year. What else are we doing? And so, I say to my son, work comes first, get all the busy work done, then you clear your head a little bit. And on the weekends is when I start thinking about, okay, I've got these other companies. What are we doing with them? What's happening with this medical device? What's happening with the helmet giveaways? And once you clear all the routine stuff out, then you can start focusing on those. So most of the time, if I'm thinking about things other than the Monday to Friday work, I try to do it on Saturday and Sunday morning, and then leave Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening for family time. In terms of hobbies, as a surgeon, you will sacrifice a lot. So I don't play golf because if I play golf, I'm not there with the family. I don't go out with my mates because it takes away from family time. I have three children, 17, 16, 14, and I've been married for 25 years. And so the time that I'm not working on these things is my family's time. And so I've got to make sure that they've got time as well. So pretty busy time. But, the keys honestly are you got to look after yourself. And you guys are at a stage where you're healthy and you can pretty much do anything and eat anything. But as you get older, and if you become a surgeon, there's a level of fitness that you've got to have. So you've got to eat right. You've got to exercise. Things like, I mean, I don't drink alcohol mainly because I don't drink alcohol when I'm on call. I don't drink alcohol the day that I'm working. I don't drink alcohol the night before I operate or the night after. That leaves like one day a week, and I don't want to drink on that day. And I'm very happy with that. Don't smoke, and just try and stay healthy. And I think if you want a fruitful career in anything that involves using these, you've got to look after yourself. And it's important to balance your life as well as you can. And surgical specialties will demand a lot of time. And so whatever time you've got to be very judicious in how you use it.
That sounds like a lot. Thank you. You covered sort of my next question as well. So from what you explained, that sounds like it could get hectic quite easily if you don't manage your time well.
Yeah, here's what I sort of say. You've got 24 hours in a day, right? You should sleep at least 7 hours. So let's say I sleep 7.5 hours. Um, then you work, then somewhere you got to squeeze in time with family, then somewhere you got to squeeze in time for everything else. And so that's the biggest challenge is work-life balance. And what you've got to decide as you get more and more down the road is how to say no. Early on, you won't say no to anything because you're just trying to get yourself known. You want to be somebody who solves problems. You want to be somebody who gets things done. As you go through your career, by the way, people like problem solvers. So there's two kinds of residents, two kinds of medical students. There's one who says, I have a problem, what do I do? And there's the second one who says, this was the problem, this is what we did to fix it. People like the second one. So back to what you said is you got to work out what's important and what's not. So saying no is part of that. And exercise is important, but if you've got a hobby that takes a lot of time, then it becomes challenging to balance it, particularly when you've got a family. So I'm sure I'm not great at balancing it, but I do the best I can. And the answer is you just kind of got to prioritize work and family comes first. Your health comes probably first or second in there as well, and everything else comes after that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I completely agree. So feedback from patients is quite important in the medical field. So as the founder of SpirePoint, how do you incorporate feedback into your own product development?
Yep. So here's the thing. Here's what happens. These big companies make products that we put in. For example, a hip replacement or screws in the spine, whatever they make. The big companies make them and they ask surgeons for their input. And then the surgeons give their ideas away. And I did that for a long time. And I sat down and I saw a problem. And the problem was really something that wasn't getting addressed by companies. And it was how do we stop patients who have a good surgery come back because 5 years later, the next thing is fallen out in their neck. That was really what was the impetus of SpinePoint. And so I was trying to solve a problem that industry wasn't solving. And that's where I started saying, well, I think I can do this. It's a long road. I started working on product development believe it or not, in about 2004. And so that's 20 years. And the first product that I developed is going to get FDA approval in about 3 months, and hopefully it'll get used in patients early next year. And so, in answer to your question, every surgery we do, we're critical. What happens in life is you forget your successes and you focus on your failures, which is not a good way of living it, but that's what we do. We become our harshest critic. So every time I do a surgery, 99% of it's good and 1% of it is bad. And all I remember is the 1%. And it's the same thing when you do a test. You don't think about all the questions you got right. You just think about the ones you got wrong. Um, but you got to be kind to yourself. And so every time we do something, and it doesn't mean just surgery, everything you do, you've got to learn something from it. And so that experience has to change when you face the same problem again. So I would argue that you're asking me is really the lesson of life, which is you take feedback from your experiences and it changes you for the better for when you face a similar problem in the future. And that's all my implants do is taking things I saw in the operating room, trying to solve those problems and try to make something a little bit better that I didn't see that was available, and then hopefully bring it into fruition so it helps patients.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That's quite insightful. So we know everybody grows throughout their medical career. So looking at your most challenging case types, so how have you like learned to handle it differently from the start of your career to now?
I think the biggest thing is knowing your limits. So there are cases that I took on when I was early on, and I wasn't good. I was lucky. Um, but when you do a lot of operating, eventually things start catching up with you. And so there's a balancing act. Number one, you got to believe in yourself. So I get scared. I get scared before I do cases. Sometimes I say a prayer before a case. Please let this go well. If I don't do that, I feel like I'm not focused enough for it. And so for me, the most challenging cases early on um, were cases where I was out of my depth and I didn't even know I was out of my depth. And I did them and I got lucky. And later on in my career, I realized I wasn't good. I was just lucky doing those cases and they managed to go well. And so, and so the answer is experience helps. You've got to learn from experience. And there's no one type of case. Every case is difficult. There are tumor cases. There's one lady that I operated on, and I still remember her name. And normally when we do brain tumors, there's only like one brain tumor that we're taking out. She had seven, and she had seven in the back of her brain. And I was in my first year of practice, and I had this crazy plan, and I was going to get all seven of them in one surgery. So I was getting the last one, it started bleeding like stink. And I remember my assistant was helping me, and I said to my assistant, look, don't worry, one of two things is going to happen. She's going to die or we're going to control the bleeding. That's all that's going to happen. And we controlled the bleeding and she survived and she did great. And I was lucky. And so I think, there's a balancing act. You have to believe in yourself. You need some confidence in yourself, but then you also got to know what your limits are. And as I've gotten older, I've learned what my limits are and where to be more careful.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think I do the same when it comes to my tests. I also like do a quick prayer to make sure I do well.
Yeah, I
But
think it's a good thing. I mean, stay humble. The easiest thing as we get older is to become arrogant and you forget where you came from. And I remember what it was like being a high school student. I just wanted to get into medical school. That was my dream, medical school. Not neurosurgery, not spine point, not the rest of this. I just wanted to be a doctor. And if I'd sat on the corner, I'd help patients and written prescriptions for them. I was more than happy doing that. So I think you mustn't forget where you've come from. We all came from where you guys are. You've all got hopes and dreams, and you all want to succeed in life. And the only thing I'm going to say is dream big. Make it happen, and you can do it. So, how has spine surgery changed since we started practicing 3 decades ago? So, a couple of things happened. So, sorry, I'm just going to adjust my chair. When I went into spine surgery, We didn't have anything called navigation. Navigation is like GPS. So when you use your GPS, it tells you where the car is and tells you how to get there. We just had to know the anatomy and you had to know where it was. Now we have GPS, and GPS is huge. The second thing is we can do things through smaller incisions, and we send patients home. So if I do something called a lumbar fusion, where we join bones together and we unpinch them, that used to be a 6 hour surgery or a 4 hour surgery. Now it's a 1 or 2 hour surgery, maybe 2.5 hours. It used to be you stay in hospital for a week, and now you stay in hospital for one night. So the changes that have happened have been a lot of things, and this is in medicine in general. The input of technology has been fantastic. Technology has made things safer, more reproducible. We've gotten a little bit smarter in terms of preventing complications. So for infection, we've got better things that we can do now. We're generally quicker than we used to be because a lot of the tools we use have improved as well, and the training has improved as well. So I think this is true for everything. I mean, if you look at a motor vehicle now, just pick an average Toyota or something, you look inside it and then look at a Toyota from 20 years ago, the amount of tech that's in your car is crazy now. The amount of tech that's on your phone is crazy now. And so just like your phone now doesn't, you don't just use it as a phone, you use it as a personal assistant. We're getting AI. You use it for GPS, you use it for 15 different platforms of communication. The same things happen in surgery. I think the biggest challenge that your generation is going to face is my generation. The hardest part was access to knowledge. So in high school, we didn't have the internet. You had to go to the library. If you're lucky, you had some encyclopedias at home. Your generation has the world's knowledge base at your fingertips. And what's getting even more crazy is with AI, you can access most of that. And so the hardest part that you're going to have is you'll have the knowledge at your fingertips. The question is, how do you use it? And how do you be efficient with it? For us, we just had to get the knowledge. The knowledge was hard to get. Now you have the knowledge. You can look up any condition in neurosurgery now and get 3 opinions on it. And this is the best way to do it. We didn't have that. So I think everything is changing. And the challenges that I had are very different to the challenges you're going to have, because you really have to now think about artificial intelligence and how to use it to your benefit. And the second thing is you have more knowledge access than you can handle, but you've got to learn how to efficiently access all of that. And spine surgery has been the same thing. It's just evolved.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because yeah, we have to stay up to date with the medical field. I'm sure you know that, and it's constantly changing. So how do
It is.
you stay current with the developments and
Sure.
stay current from like proven methods?
Yeah, it's hard. So I get about 7 of these a month. And what I do is I look at the table of contents and I see, is there anything interesting? And I read that one article. So number one, you read journals. Number two, I participate a lot with other surgeons. So LinkedIn, you might have seen me on there. And I interact with other surgeons. The second thing is the medical device companies. They send us information. The third thing is you go to meetings and you listen to presentations. So you're 100% correct. Everything is evolving. So the hard part is when there's a new technology, when do you adopt it? And there's a saying, don't be the first one on the bus, don't be the last one on the bus. And what that means is sometimes when you're the early adopter, it's hard or things don't work. And I've used things in the past which they're not even available anymore. They didn't work. But then you don't want to be the last person on the bus where everybody else is doing it and you're not doing it. So there's a balancing act. And so I think the right answer is you have to stay in touch with medical journals, and the general medical journals for you folks like the Lancet and New England Medical Journal are probably the key ones. And then as you subspecialize, you focus on your subspecialty journals. Then you talk to colleagues, then you talk to industry, and you go to meetings and you listen at the meetings, what's coming, you walk the industry and you'll see what's new out there. So there's a process to it, but this could be the same as describing a hobby. So, when I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of cricket, and this is before 2020, and I never stayed up to date, and I don't know the rules anymore. The rules have changed. And I used to play field hockey, and I bought a field hockey ball recently, and the ball's changed. So things change, and if you don't stay up with it, then you kind of get disconnected with it as well. And so in your specialty, meetings, journals, colleagues, social interactions, they're the right things to be doing.
Okay, so further from that, if you were to talk to us really, so what would your advice be to aspiring medics, neurosurgeons, maybe cardiac surgeons, like etc.? What would your advice be for us?
In terms of staying up to date or in general?
I'd say in general, like maybe as aspiring doctors.
So, okay, couple of things. Number one, do it because you love it. Find something you love and do it with a passion. It doesn't matter what you do, you just got to do it with a passion. If you do it with a passion, you will excel. Um, the three things I tell my son are work hard. You don't get anywhere without hard work, because someone is willing to work harder than you. And if it's something that's competitive, then you've got to work hard. Number two, be kind. Try to be nice, not just at the beginning, but the whole journey. You're going to interact with a lot of people. You'll interact with high school students down the line, medical students, the janitor, the cleaning staff, nurses, patients. Be kind, and be organized. So if you want success, you've got to be organized. So you saw at the beginning there, Serena had put up what I've been doing, and it sounds like a lot, but I juggle all of those. It's just being organized. And so work hard, be organized, be kind. Three keys. Sounds crazy? They're the keys. And people say to me, no, 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 you must be really intelligent. That's why you did so well. And it's like, you have no idea how hard I worked, because that's what did it. It's hard work and willing to work harder than anybody else. Whether it's your schoolwork, whether it's studying, you just got to put the hours in. And there's a saying that for a test, once you get out of high school, the tests are 1,000 hour exams, 1,000 hours. So for neurosurgery, we used to say it's 1,000 hours. So you can study for the test over a year and do 20 hours a week, or you could do it 40 hours a week, but you got to do it in 6 months. But you have to cross the 1,000 hour threshold, so the threshold to get there. Now, if you look at elite athletes, they talk about 10,000 hours. So you do 10,000 hours of anything and you get good at it. So I did not feel comfortable as a neurosurgeon in everything that I did for about 10 to 15 years. That's the 10,000 hours. So you've got to work hard. You've got to be diligent. You've got to be dedicated. You've got to look after yourself, eat healthy lifestyle. You've got to be positive. Be the half glass full person. Don't be the half glass empty person, and keep learning. And they're the tools. There's no magic to it. It's just hard work, positive attitude, being organized, being kind. If you can do all of those things, doors will open for you. Things happen. And you'll be in positions where you'll say, I think it's hopeless. And all of a sudden, an opportunity has presented itself. So there's no secrets. They're the keys to doing everything.
So moving on to the future of neurosurgery. So how do you think like maybe in 5 years, 10 years, neurosurgery might change as we like start to become doctors?
So I think robotics is going to come more into it. Robotics is supposed to do one of a couple of things: do the dangerous stuff or do the repetitive stuff or improve our precision. Those three things. Make it more precise, make it reproducible. And I think robotics will come. And I think it's a good thing as well. I think outpatient surgery, we have this concept that when you get sick, you go to the hospital. But maybe when you get sick, you go to the hospital, you have your procedure, and then you go home. So this concept of home care, where you don't spend as much time in the hospital and you go home. You have your surgery and you go home that day or the next morning. I think that's going to become more and more. So technology is going to take a bigger and bigger role. That's going to happen. Surgeries, I think, are going to get a little bit shorter. And care at home is going to become bigger and bigger. And that's a good thing. I mean, who wants to be in a hospital? When you go to a hospital, if any of you have been in hospitals, they're noisy. Um, they wake you up all night. The bed's not comfy. The food's not the food you're used to. So I think technology will continue to advance things, and we'll be looking at more care outside the hospital. And I'll give you an example: oncology. So the cancer specialists. When I was an intern and a resident, the cancer ward was full of patients getting chemotherapy. Now they get it all as an outpatient. And there's very few of them that are in the hospital. And you get your treatment as an outpatient and you go home. So care at home is coming, robotics is coming, and more technology involvement with surgical precision and robotics and things like that is coming.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions from me. I'll sign off now and Serena will continue.
Yeah.
All right. So now we'll be moving on to your advice and the future of neurosurgery, which has been touched on upon. Um, what are some attributes of a good neurosurgeon in your opinion?
Okay, I can only talk about people that I worked with. And the people that I worked with, number one, no temper. Gotta be very calm. You need a calm demeanor. When things are going badly, the last thing you want is somebody who's yelling and screaming and can't handle it. So the ability to work under pressure is very important. You need stamina. The days are long. There's a saying that the days are long, the weeks are short. And I sort of equate a neurosurgery to a middle distance run with some sprinting. So you're running at a middle distance pace. Occasionally you're sprinting. At the end of the day, it's a marathon, but you need stamina. So in order to have stamina, you got to do a couple of things. You'll look after your mental health. So there's got to be positivity to it. You need a support of friends and family. You need to look after the machine that is your body. So eating healthy, looking after your weight, not smoking, limiting alcohol. They're the key things you need to do. So I think good neurosurgeons are calm. Good neurosurgeons learn from their mistakes. Good neurosurgeons are hardworking. Good neurosurgeons are humble. Um, they they focus on learning from their failures. They don't gloat about their successes, and they're thankful. And so if you look at yourself and you say, what skills would help me be a neurosurgeon? Attention to detail. You got to be OCD. If you're not OCD and you don't chase everything and anything, then it shows. There's a difference between a bad neurosurgeon and a good neurosurgeon. You can tell because they don't have attention to detail. So you've got to have attention to detail, and you've got to be hardworking. And it's very important. One of my mentors said about me to one of the other residents was he doesn't take any shortcuts. Every time I take a shortcut in doing something, I get burnt. So you got to do it the right way. So if you do all of those things, and they're life lessons, they're not necessarily as a neurosurgeon, but can control your temper. You have a positive outlook. You're not scared of hard work. You're organized. You have attention to detail. You're not going to be a good neurosurgeon. You're going to be good at anything, running a company, being a pediatrician, being a dentist, being an attorney, being a lawyer, being a politician. Well, politician, you got to, that's probably different, but because all politicians seem to lie. But all of those attributes, if you can get those, hard work, humble, organized, attention to detail, they're the attributes for success with anything, not just neurosurgery.
Yeah, I agree, especially with such an intricate job as a neurosurgeon. You really need to be attentive to detail, very
Yeah.
hardworking, and just
And
relentless for your
Well,
success.
and here's the other thing, Serena. You don't need good hands.
Yeah.
So people have this idea that you must be very gifted with your hands.
Mm,
You learn. It's like being a carpenter. It's
mm.
like being an electrician. It's like being making a pottery, making bowls on a pottery wheel. When you start, you're not very good. Your hand, it's like you're all thumbs. And I remember when I started, I said to my boss, "I'm left-handed. Is that a problem?" He said, "No." And then one day he said to me, "A trained monkey can do these surgeries. The hardest question is when to do something and when not to do something." And he was right. If you do this long enough, you do get good at it. It doesn't matter what we do. You could be swinging a cricket bat. And if you decide to do that for 10,000 hours, whether or not you're going to get pretty good at it. And so the tactile hand skill, it's not, this is the part that's important, not this part,
It's your mindset as well. You
right?
just have to be repetitive and strive for the best.
Yep.
All right, this has already been touched on, but what role do you see AI or robotics playing in spine surgery's future?
Yeah. So I think AI is kind of interesting because it's going to help us with decision making. Remember that AI is not always right. And I'm sure you've already found that when you get into ChatGPT and you know the answer and you ask it a question and it gives you the wrong answer, but it's going to get better. The other thing that is the challenge for all of us, and whether you're a neurosurgeon, whether you're a general practitioner, is patients are using AI. So patients are putting their reports in and your recommendations, and they're coming back to you and saying, well, AI said this. What do you think about that? So AI is not going away in anything we do. Um, I don't think it's going to replace doctors. It's not going to replace surgeons. You still need somebody to, hold a scalpel, but it's going to be a bigger and bigger part of our lives. And so rather than um, ignore it, you should embrace it and learn it and use it. And as I tell my kids, learn how to use it, but don't just cut and paste everything. Use it as a guide. Robotics is still very early. Robotics is, if any, been long enough before the iPhone. There were things like Blackberries. There was Palm Pilot. They were very rudimentary. That's where robotics is right now. But I think it's coming and that it will do more and more. And I'm hopeful at a stage that simple surgeries, robotics can do that. But if it could do so simple surgeries and it frees us up, then that's a good thing. And it's a bit like when you use GPS. How many of you have actually seen a street directory or use a street directory? Your generation doesn't use it. All you do is use GPS and let that guide you from A to B. And it frees you up from thinking, which way do I go? Which exit do I take? Because the GPS is guiding us along the way. So technology is going to be rooted in our lives, whether it's our work, whether it's our social time. And I think AI robotics is going to be huge in spine surgery. And it's the same thing. It helps with dangerous work, repetitive work, or precision. Those three things. So whether you're a deep sea diver, that's dangerous work. Robotics can do that. Or whether it's precision, you're placing electrodes in the brain, or whether it's repetitive work, building a car is a good example, then robotics has a huge role in it, but we're still very early in the pathway.
I think I've seen a surgery where they use like robots to do like minimally invasive surgery, like
Mhm.
neurosurgery.
Yep.
And do you see that as like a working partner maybe in the future?
Yes, as a partner, not
Yeah.
a replacement. And I think society still wants a human
Mm.
controlling things. They don't feel comfortable in handing it over. So the robot may do part of it, but you're going to be the one guiding it. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's like airplanes can land themselves now. So the airplane's autopilot is good enough to land, but nobody wants the airplane landing itself. They want a pilot landing it. But airplanes can land themselves now. We want pilots. So there's a lot of analogies between aviation and medicine and surgery, and same thing with safety checks and staying calm under pressure and being obsessive compulsive to detail. And an addition and an assistant, not a replacement, as you said.
Especially because patients that have, that need spine surgery or neurosurgery, they need human compassion, and that's not, it's not replaceable by a robot.
100%. And then you're going to find that there's three phases in your career. The first phase of your career, you're learning the technical skills. Second phase of your career, you've got the technical skills and you're practicing them. Third phase of your career, you don't even care about the technical skills, you care about the people and you're looking after people. And that's where I'm at now, where every time I see somebody, I don't see them as a case. I see them as a person. I see the fear in their eyes. I see the hope in their eyes. And I just try to help them the best I can.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think will be the next major breakthrough in spine surgery?
Boy, is that a good question. So I think it's all incremental. So they talk about two kinds of advances, um, revolutionary and evolutionary. Revolutionary means huge breakthrough. Um, Evolutionary means that they're incremental changes. And the revolutionary changes we've had are navigation, probably robotics. We had something called BMP. So BMP is a chemical that helps bony fusion. Huge. One of the biggest things that happened about 20 years ago. In the old days, we used to take bone off the hip, scrape it out, put that in. We don't do that anymore. We use this BMP, which looks like a wet Kleenex, and we mix it in and put it into wherever we want to put it in there. So I think we're more likely to see evolutionary changes. I think materials are going to change. I have an idea for a company, and it's still very early. You can look it up. It's called Bear Claw, but it's a screw that goes around a corner. And if the screw goes around the corner, then it's less likely to pull out. And that's a project I'll work on at some stage. And so I think we're going to see incremental changes in everything. AI is going to help us make better diagnoses. One of the biggest questions, very simple question, is where does back pain come from? And a lot of times we don't know. And so being able to say this patient needs surgery, this one does not need surgery, AI will help us with that. Robotics will make sure that the bad surgeons are safe. And the but the changes are all going to be incremental along the way.
Yeah. This one's quite an interesting question. If you were to make a quote, what would you say?
Oh boy, that is an interesting question, isn't it? And I come back to the same motto I said, work hard, be kind, be organized. That's my motto in life. That's be kind, work hard. That's all we're here for. The questions you're going to struggle with throughout your life is, what purpose have I got? What's the meaning of this? Why am I here? And some of us, religion will guide us. Sometimes we get a little bit cynical. Neurosurgery deals with a ton of death and destruction. Every weekend, someone died. And I can remember, I carry a graveyard with me of people that I remember from babies to 6-month-olds to 6-year-olds to 90-year-olds that have died not because of what I did, mostly because of what they had. Sometimes we couldn't save them. Sometimes they died because of what we did. And so being kind and working hard and being organized are sort of the things that drive me throughout the day. There was a question here, which is when do you decide that surgery is the only option for the patient? It depends what they've got. If they have a cancer and it's treatable and surgery is the first treatment, we kind of push them towards surgery. If they have something like a bulging disc, then we try to do everything short of surgery. And then if their quality of life is affected or they have neurological deficit like weakness, then we push them towards surgery. So when you ask when is surgery the only option, when it's appropriate, and appropriate means it's the right time, it's the right patient, it's the right condition, everything lines up. And so you have to tailor that to every patient along the way. What keeps me going on very hard days when I feel like quitting? Isn't that a good question? I am just grateful to be a physician. I think back to when I was at your age, my dream was to get into medical school. That was it. I've lived my dream 10 times over. And I feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes in one lifetime. I trained in Australia, I ended up in America, and I don't know how that happened. And I got to reinvent myself here. So I'm just grateful for everything that has been given to me and I've achieved. And I think that's what drives you every day. There's a couple more questions there. What key qualities or skills should neurosurgeon focus on developing? I think the key qualities are going to be learning the knowledge base, number one, working hard, number two. Number three is mastering AI, and that's for anything. So I think that the answer we've hopefully covered in there. Is surgery the last option for, is it L5 treatment? Surgery plays a role if it's appropriate, again, but sometimes the right answer is we do nothing. In medical school, what things can someone can do to make the most of their degree? I think, so here's the biggest last thing that I want to finish off with. Take life one step at a time. One step at a time. Look what's your next hurdle and do the best you can for the next hurdle, then focus on the next hurdle. Sometimes the problem is you're looking so far ahead, like what's my neurosurgery going to be? Am I going to be a robotic surgeon? Am I doing vascular? That you're going to trip over the next hurdle in front of you. So it's good to put your head up and look at the horizon, but focus on the next step, next step, next step. How do you find dealing with patients at the height of their emotions and developing the sensitivity required of you as a physician? I think you got to like people, you got to want to help them. So we talk about empathy and compassion. Empathy is understanding how somebody else feels. Compassion is wanting to make a difference in terms of how they feel. So medicine is about compassion. Medicine is about helping people in the most tangible way you can. And it's not just neurosurgery, it's anything we do. How would you change the medical system? Okay, depends which system. In England, nurses and physicians are underpaid. It's a sad reality, but they're underpaid. And the working conditions aren't great. They need to improve that. In America, the health insurance companies run the show, and in America, healthcare is for profit, and that kind of runs things out. How did you know that you wanted to be in medicine? My dad was a doctor, so I used to watch him. He was a family doctor, and I used to go to his clinic and watch patients coming out, and they had a big smile on their face. And so I prayed that I could get into medicine, and it seemed like a challenge. How do you know surgery is a path you want to pursue? Is it a skill that can be required? So if I didn't do neurosurgery, I wouldn't have been a surgeon. I had no interest in orthopedics, no interest in general surgery. I would have been a radiologist. So to me, the technical part of it, you can learn that. You don't need to learn the physical skills. You can do that. Women can do it, men can do it. Unless you're missing a hand, you can do it. So the technical skills are pretty straightforward. You think that's the hardest part, but that's the hardest part. What's one thing that you change about your medicine career journey? Nothing. I'm grateful. I've made the best decision at the time. My wife, every time she makes a decision, she reflects back on it and says, "What if I made the other decision?" And then we talk about it for 6 months. I'm not like that. What I do is I make the best decision at the time and then I move on. And I think you've got to do that. To me, every day is it's a capsule. So at the end of the day, when I walk to the parking lot, whatever happened today that was good or bad, it's over. And if it was bad, tomorrow's another day. You get another chance to do it. You just got to get up and keep going. And you've got to believe in yourself and not quit. And so every day is its own new day and it's separate from the day before. And so you've just got to take it one day at a time. Believe in yourself, work hard, be kind. One day at a time is what you do. So I wouldn't change anything. I'm very grateful for what I did. And I'm very thankful for the success that I got in my career.
That's true for neurosurgery as well, because you need to be really good at decision making
Yep.
at that moment. You don't have, a whole day to think about what you're going to do with a patient mid-surgery.
Yep. Yeah, make the best decision at the time. And it's always crazy to be, they talk about the Monday morning quarterback where it's important to go back and learn, but just make the best decision you can. There was one question, what do you think the next 10 years will look like in neurosurgery? I think it's just a refinement of what we're doing now. Robotics will come in, AI will come in, quicker surgeries, smaller surgeries, better indications, quicker discharges, better outcomes. One of the things that I'm hoping is the chemotherapy for brain tumors improves. So gliomas, which is the bad one, malignant brain tumor, which is about 40% of them, our treatments for them still suck. And if you get a glioma, you're still dead within a year or two. So there's a lot of work to be done that's not neurosurgical work, that's neuro-oncology work, that's nanotechnology work on treatment of brain tumors. And as a neurosurgeon, you cut lumps out, but the lumps come back. And so the treatment is not surgery, the treatment is something else. So we need advances in neuro-oncology to treat brain tumors. And hopefully that will come within the next 10 years.
Another question I have for you
Mhm.
is, like you did international education and training.
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
that shape your approach to neurosurgery?
Yeah, it makes me a better person. So the problems are the same, but the approaches are different. So the Australians approach things very differently to the Canadians, to the Americans. The Americans tend to be very aggressive in terms of what they do, and this is in life in general. You've seen that. The Australians try to avoid complications. The Canadians are very thoughtful and methodical, and the English are the same. The English tend not to do too much, they tend to do just enough. So, by learning different approaches, you learn that there's no one right answer to how to do things. There are multiple ways to do it. And we're an international brother and sisterhood. And we all have differences, but as physicians and as neurosurgeons and surgeons, we all have a very common heritage. We share a common, alliance in that as well. So international interactions, I think, are really important. You got to get out of your own little sphere and see what else is going on. Okay, one last question, and it's like, oh, two questions. How do you maintain your passion and motivation for your work after so many years? I'm just curious. I'm curious, and I'm always looking for how to do something newer or better. That's all. Be curious. Do you think some surgery will be completely replaced by AI or robotics? Probably. There'll be a long time that, and let me change the question back to Sarah. and say, Sarah, would you be comfortable flying in a plane that had no pilot? So if AI and autopilot and robotics went, the plane ran on that, would you be comfortable with that? So if you go to different cities, there are monorails and there's nobody, it's automated. There's nobody driving it. So it's coming. Would you be comfortable being in a car that has no driver? We already have it in San Francisco. There's something called Waymo, which is a taxi service that does not have a driver. So these things are coming, and I think some things will get replaced. At the end of the day, if it's better for patients, it's safer, it's quicker, it's a good thing. But they're always going to need surgeons. They're always going to need physicians. People are always going to need help and care. And whether it's a recession, depression, a boom time, people are going to need nurses, physician assistants, physical therapists, doctors, occupational therapists, speech therapists, all of those things. So whatever you do, you don't have to be a neurosurgeon. You could be a really good physical therapist, but just do it to the best of your ability. Be kind and work hard, and you'll get what you dream of.
All right, that was a wonderful, wonderful event. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, everyone. Good luck with
For-
your career.
yeah, thank you. For everyone that joined, can you please fill out this Google form and after that, we can start exiting. Dr. Lali, I'll email you a form by myself, and it will just be some feedback. Uh,
Sure, you got it.
yeah.
Thank you
Thank you so
for
much for your
asking.
time.
You got it. It's a privilege to speak to you folks, and I wish everyone the best in their lives and careers.
Thank you so much.